Hey guys, and welcome to another season of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and in this season, we uncover the remarkable power of genuine compassion and insightful vision. This season, we're here to show the world that we, as individuals, are the brand, regardless of misconceptions. Join us as we go deep into the inspiring journeys of our guests, each one a testament to the impact and influence of kindness and creativity. Don't just take my word for it. Hear their stories, feel their passion, and discover the transformative potential within us all. So stay tuned as we shine a light on the truths that connects us and inspires change.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm the commercial director at The Black Farmer, and you're listening to the Us People podcast show with Savia Rocks.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People Show. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I am abundantly humbled to have Alex here with me. Alex is the commercial director of The Black Farmer. Alex, I want to thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Us People Show. How are you?
No worries. Yeah, very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for asking. It's been a busy day, but it's a day that I'm happy to be around regardless of the weather. So yeah, it's nice. Thank you so much for asking. So Alex, so my first question for you is, could you tell me a bit about yourself, where you grew up and how that influenced you to be the person who you are today?
Yeah, sure. So born and bred in London. Yeah, yeah, exactly. South London. So I was brought up in Clapham. I live not too far actually from Clapham Junction. So yeah, I spent the majority of my childhood there. Went to a local school called Thomas's. So Thomas's, the prep school. So I was at Thomas's till about 13, in which after I moved to boarding school. So I went to a school in Dorset called Bryanston. So I was at Bryanston for between the ages of 13 and 18. And at that point, actually, my parents moved down to Cornwall and Devon. So there's a place called Launceston, sits just on the border. So they moved down there, I think probably when I was around sort of 16 years old. So moved down there while my sister and I were away at school. And then after that, I kind of moved to Cardiff University and things like that. So I guess to answer your question, it's kind of one of the great things that I loved about being at boarding school. You kind of develop that independence really quickly.
Yes.
I think a lot of people, obviously, you go away to university and that's probably the first time really that you're away from home. But obviously going away at 13 and obviously it's actually a very young age, but you grow up quite quickly and you learn to be really independent. So I think, to be honest, loads of people have very different experiences and thoughts on that system. But for me, I think it gave me a great opportunity to kind of definitely grow as a character, become independent and set me up for, well, the career I am today, really.
That's kind of awesome, actually, when you see it like that, in a way, where your parents send you off, regardless, even if you were at a younger age, you still decide. Because I always say to people in life, your life can go in so many different ways, and you never know what's going to happen. But I can see that your path is driven. I can see you're motivated. So you decided within yourself, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, please do. You decided within yourself that you have a focus. And you just wanted to make sure that focus was on track and that you're doing something that you love.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's one of those things that I definitely discovered after being at school. I think being around the brand and the Black Farmer brand, which I'm sure we'll go on to, kind of I definitely wanted to create and carve out my own path and what I wanted to do. But when you're surrounded by quite an entrepreneurial environment and household, I kind of in the back of my mind knew that was always the direction I was going to go to. So I kind of teed myself up in terms of what I wanted to do eventually. But obviously, as you go to school and as you kind of grow up and have that independent stuff changes and you kind of carve your career from there, really.
No, that totally makes a lot of sense. One of the questions that I do love asking guests is to go a little bit deeper into who they are as an individual. So my question for you, Alex, is can you define who you are as a person, but also who do you see when you look in the mirror? But on the flip side of that question, has there ever been a time where you have looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you? How did you go from a person that you might not have liked the vision of to becoming the person that you are today, who feels like you have purpose and you're doing what you love within yourself?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, like, it's definitely being at school in that environment. Confidence, I think, for me, is definitely something that's
100%.
definitely shaped, and I didn't probably have right at the beginning. But I think, I don't know if it's natural that it kind of comes to you, but definitely what I've learned and looking back is I'm much more confident in myself and my approach and around people, and definitely from being in my environment and being at school, that's kind of developed. I think one of the big things for me that I learned quite quickly is the importance of perspective. So
Yes.
to give you a bit of context, I think it's probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I had a seizure when I was up in Edinburgh. And I kind of went through all the processes, went to GP and saw a specialist, a neurologist, and said that I had this kind of condition called AVM, which I won't go into the detail, but effectively it's like a tangled blood vessel or like a birthmark in the brain,
Yeah.
which, if goes untreated, could actually be quite dangerous, and you increase your risk of hemorrhaging and things like that. So I think one of the things that and going back to your question, I used to kind of stress the small stuff. I'd worry about absolutely everything, menial stuff, like, didn't matter at all, until I had that and realized actually a lot of the stuff we surround by and all the white noise actually doesn't matter at all.
Yes.
So perspective kind of shaped a lot of the things that I do today. Is like, there's a huge amount of stuff that's important to me and to my life. And I have the confidence in doing that and approaching it, but actually looking at the bigger picture and how your life is going to be and what you want to do has probably been the biggest realization for me, going forward and kind of shaping as an adult, really.
That's actually an awesome answer. I didn't even expect all that to come out from it, to be quite honest. It's nice when you ask that question and then you learn so much from someone just from just from asking one question. So you've been through so much, and
Yeah.
now I understand why you decided to develop yourself in the way that you have. And one of the most important things that you did say is not to stress over the small stuff, because in life, especially now, Alex, and I'm sure you'll humbly agree, there is so much going on. There is so much political things going on in the world that people are stressing over the small things because they don't know if tomorrow is promised, or they don't know what's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's just like, when I look back at it and some of the stuff that I was worrying over with work and the amount you think about it, it's just like, you're going to remember
yeah,
all that stressful stuff in the next year or two. Absolutely not. And it's mad that it had to took like quite a serious life and health event for me to realize the importance of perspective. And
yeah.
for anyone, it shouldn't have to take something like that to happen to you to actually realize that there's so many bigger things in the world to worry about than stuff that we do anyway.
No, 100% I agree with you. Let's talk about your journey of how you became a commercial director. I put commercial director and entrepreneur because I believe both of them are intertwined with each other. But let's talk about why you decided the path to become a commercial director, number one, but also the journey to becoming a commercial director.
Yeah, sure. So I guess in terms of the actual brand itself, just to give you a bit of background of the Black Farmer. So the Black Farmer is
Yeah.
my dad. So he kind of created the brand sort of 20 years ago. And when we were down in Cornwall and Devon, he was called the Black Farmer by by our neighbours and farmers and stuff. And it's a brand obviously no one's going to copy because he is the only black farmer in the
Yeah.
country. So he created a brand which sort of champion diversity and inclusion from a branded perspective within, I guess, an underrepresented environment
Yeah.
within the agricultural sector, but also creating a premium brand which sits within the retail space and sits within the produce space as well. So
Yeah.
I can remember back in the day, we were sitting in the house and labeling up the original sources and going to trade shows and effectively just driving that visibility and awareness for the brand because it was such early stages of the brand. So my early kind of experiences of it was doing that. And as I said in the beginning, it was being surrounded by people who were within an entrepreneurial household. So as I said, sort of back of my mind, I kind of always wanted to follow that journey. But
Yeah.
I think going back to one of your other questions is like, I'm kind of I wouldn't say I'm like a massive risk taker. You know, I'm always quite hesitant on taking the leap. So, you know, if you fast forward to where I am now at 30 years old, and when I actually thought, you know what, I'm ready to go into the family business, it's relatively unknown, it's relatively uncertain, but it's a great opportunity. So I built my career going through sort of working with suppliers, into retail, into kind of quick commerce, building that foundation of knowledge. So actually 10 years of that career, I'm actually ready to go in the brand and say, you know what, I can go in and add value, because my concern and worry was that I didn't want to just join a brand based on the fact that we share the same surname. You know, I wanted to do it on merit. So, you know, I created that journey for myself so I could build up on the experience and have the knowledge and be able to add value and grow the brands like I wanted to over the next sort of 3 to 5 years.
And that's one of the questions I actually wanted to ask you, because, and I'm so glad you said what you said. You didn't want to just go into a brand because you have the name. There are so many families that do that. But one of my questions for you is, what was it like for you growing up in a family that was so entrepreneurial and, you know, had a focus and had a purpose? Because even when I was reading up about the brand, and obviously everything around the brand, which I think is important to have, you know, you decided to say, no, I'm going to go out, because I know you've worked for Sainsbury's, I know you've worked for other different companies as well, which is fantastic. But what made you what was it like growing up for you, surrounded by the brand itself?
Yeah, it was, I think because in my nature, I'm very process driven. I kind of like processes. That's the kind of the way I follow things. So I guess having my dad, who is very kind of anti all of that, you know, embraces uncertainty and jeopardy,
Yes.
you know, being myself, it was probably a bit like very against my nature. But kind of as I've grown up and been around that brand, I've seen the benefit of having that entrepreneurial spirit and actually where you can take it. So,
Yeah.
you know, it probably took me a lot longer than obviously it took him of what he wanted to do. But as I said before, kind of I followed that route and carved that path for me. And actually, now that I've joined the business, I can start to see those entrepreneurial tendencies come out on what I'm doing from a day to
Yeah.
day, and
Yeah.
having the foundation to build a really strong brand, which actually in hindsight and looking retrospectively, I probably didn't have at the beginning. And I was quite comfortable in a space where there was an element of protection. You
Yeah.
know, all the business I've worked for, you know, they're a corporate environment. They're quite risk averse. It's quite
Yeah.
that's a normal route to follow. Then you go all the way to the other side where you join a brand where actually we're 20 years in, but actually anything can happen the next
Yeah.
week. Or, you know how the market industry is. So it's that element of risk that you still play with. Although there's a foundation of the business, you're not quite sure on what's coming up next. So yeah, I think because my nature wasn't typically entrepreneurial, it was difficult to adjust. But as
Yeah.
being around it and being around people who have got an entrepreneurial spirit, it massively helped that as well.
Let's talk about what a commercial director does. I've
Yeah.
spoken to quite a few commercial directors. They have different perspectives, different creative minds. Let's talk about what a commercial director actually does so everyone can understand it a bit better.
Yeah, sure. It's probably quite subjective, to be honest. It depends who you ask. It's kind of a title I gave to myself. But I think ultimately the way that I form what a commercial director does in the Black Pharma business is basically focusing on growth and the strategy.
Yes.
We've got a brand, as I said, has been around for 20 years, has built a really strong, loyal customer following from
Yes.
the brand effectively. But although that's great, there are so many different opportunities in the way that the market's moving to build on that. So kind
Yeah.
of my ultimate aim is to build and renew a complete brand vision strategy, and to go about that by various strategic and growth initiatives effectively. So
Yeah.
my job is effectively to continue to grow the brand where to a point where we're happy and we can see various opportunities within the next sort of 3 to 5 years. So strategy and vision is kind of what I'm leading on, and then the other bit is just management as well. So we've got kind of supply chain, finance, marketing, making sure we're bringing all these bits together, driving efficiencies where we can, and building a really strong team, which obviously are great at what they do, but also enjoy working for the platform. They can see the mission and what we're trying to achieve as well, is what I'm trying to create. But I'm 12 weeks in, so we'll see what happens.
That's actually not bad for 12 weeks in, to be quite fair.
Yeah. But as I said, like it's one of those things that, although sort of 3 months in, because it's not like starting a new job afresh, I've been part of it and understood it. So I've kind of built up the knowledge on how to build it. It's now just actually putting theory into practice and build on it. So I think for me, and I think my dad will kind of resonate, is 2025 is going to be a really big year for us. We've got a load of plans in the pipeline on how we can grow the brand and sort of take it to the next level, really.
Let's talk about in what ways can effective leadership influence the success of retails and teams and operations. How do you feel that leadership is a key word in moving the brand forward?
So I think leadership for me comes in probably two types, really. I think communication's been 100%. Really key. Yes. Communication on everything we're doing, from all the immediate team members. I think getting all teams to talk to each other and making sure they're doing what they need to be doing is really key. And actually, to be honest, I think COVID has made that really difficult. People have completely different mixed views on working from home and being in an office environment. My personal view, and it's my personal view purely because I've been in an office environment and I've seen the importance of collaboration and trying to achieve a common goal, I think is really, really important. Having a mix of both, I think, is really difficult and actually impacts the communication element. So I think having a really clear communication is really key. And sort of teamwork and collaboration and building a really strong workforce and workspace for people to basically bring initiative and ideas to the table. I think one of the key things that I'm really keen on is for people just not to be isolated because their job title might be a supply chain manager or finance manager. Yes. It's actually just coming in and just kind of questioning the status quo and bringing opportunities to the table, because that's what I want people to do, is just come in and be passionate about the brand and then also focus on the growth of the brand. So holding people to account, of course, on what they're doing, but also not being afraid to bring ideas and opportunities to the table. And I think from my perspective, if I can be a leader where people aren't afraid to do that and communicate ideas and not fear that they're going to be judged, I think it's going to be a really important, because, I go back to what you said at the beginning, one of the things that I really struggled with at the beginning was kind of speaking up at work and things, because I'd always second guess myself on, like, actually, is this the right thing to be saying? And by the time you're ready to say something, someone else in the room's already said it, kind of thing. So you're like, oh, I should have said that. So just trying to give the workforce sort of the idea that you can speak up and no question's a stupid question, really.
Who has been some of the greatest influences in your life that has helped you to build the confidence within yourself to be able to do the work that you do?
Yeah, to be honest, it's kind of surrounded by the people that I've worked with, really. And there's I probably can't really sit here and say there's been like a huge influence from sort of a massive celebrity, but people that I've worked with, across my whole career, their leadership style, the way they've treated me, and the way that I've kind of wanted to develop as a person to emulate on how they've treated other people and how they've developed a team. And managers that I've had along the way have been great in getting the best out of me and supporting me. And again, it goes back to what you said before, like, that's given me the confidence to speak up and not be afraid to share your opinion. So that my work sort of career has been really important and influential on everything I've done, but then also sort of being with my family as well. So obviously Dad's is very charismatic and entrepreneur. That's someone naturally you'd look up to, but then obviously sort of my sister and mum have also done their own thing and carved their own path, which for me again is very kind of inspiring and influences me to actually take the leap as well.
One of the things I do like is hearing, and so we look at life sometimes from a bird's eye view, and we
Mm.
see things differently from how our parents may see things. So,
Mm.
from your perspective, Alex, I would love to know, when your parents was making this brand and you were standing on the outside, how did you view things from your perspective?
When the brand started, I didn't really give it much of a second thought, to be honest. It wasn't something that I really understood. I think it was just like a brand, and it was at the time, like, you might have seen from social media and things about my dad. Obviously, he loves the marketing element of it, and he is effectively
Yeah,
the face of it, and always will be the face of it. Is a brand which is relatable to him. It's only when I truly started my career where I actually understood the importance that the brand was having on people and how it resonated with people as well. So initially, I was just like, from my very limited knowledge, I understood it was a brand. I also understood that it was quite a controversial name. Yeah, you'd be amazed the amount of people talk about the black farmer and a bit like, oh, should I say that? Shouldn't I be saying that? It's quite an interesting one. So people spoke about it because we were in retailers, we had suppliers that supplied us, and I worked within them as well. So people were familiar with the brand. I didn't really get to realize like how impactful the brand has been and how widespread until I got a lot older. So that's when I started to actually realize, actually, I want to be a part of this and a massive part of this going forward, really. So yeah, at the beginning, not a huge amount, but now definitely realize the importance that the brand has had on people and the retail space as well.
I would love to know who. And so I'm going to take you away from being a commercial director for a second. I'm going to take you away from, working with your parents. Who is Alex
Mm.
himself when he is away in his own space, in his own thought? Who is the person and the individual Alex himself?
Very chilled, very relaxed, I
You
think.
seem pretty much like that, to be quite fair, yeah.
Yeah, very. And I think people say that about me the whole time. Quite a laid back person. I guess there are things definitely that, as I said to you before, that stressing the small stuff has been definitely a big part of my growing up, and it's only till recently that I've kind of taken a different perspective and
Mm-hmm.
view on it. So I think from kind of going forward, like I want and being part of the brand to basically get the best out of myself and my potential, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I've got a position where I truly feel that I can do that. And that's only happened through sort of past experiences and things like that. But if you ask people, generally quite chilled, quite relaxed. But actually, if you ask me sort of 10 to 15 years ago, even if you think that, there's probably a huge amount going on my mind on stuff in that I was stressing about, which did not matter at
Yeah,
all to anyone. So, yeah, I think from my perspective at the moment, I feel like I'm in a really positive space. And, if I plan the next sort of 5 to 10 years, I can see a sort of a really great place for where I am and the brand as well, which is really exciting.
that sounds really cool. What is, if I said to you, how do you believe that you break down barriers culturally? And because of, the Black Farmer brand, how do you believe that you bring the culture of the Black Farmer brand into the world to help break down barriers and bring people together?
Do you mean from a brand or just for myself?
I think from both perspectives, I think it's good to hear both perspectives. I think it's good to hear how you feel it is as a brand, but also how you feel it is from your personal opinion.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really, when I look back at my career in food, like having, and there are statistics which I'm unsure at the moment, but in terms of kind of like a diversity perspective in big companies within the retail space, they're massively underrepresented.
Yeah,
I look back to the career I had in Sainsbury's or some of the suppliers, there isn't a massive representation of a diverse background. So for
yeah,
me, it was kind of like, who do you look around to for inspiration? Or I want to be like X who sits on the board of directors because they're from a diverse background. So for me, when I looked around, it was actually like quite a proud moment, because actually I was one of, well, a proud moment because I feel like I was representing a minority within a space which is predominantly white or
yeah,
middle aged. But then also slightly sad at the same time, because it's such a big space within the retail market, which is
yeah,
massively underrepresented by people. So for me, it's kind of a bit of a bittersweet on there's so much more we can do within that space to put sort of different representations within retail as well. So from my personal perspective, it was definitely a mixture of the two. For brand, it's similar, really. You know, we obviously produce premium products. We sit within retail space, but we also champion diversity and inclusion in what we're doing. So one of the key things, and again, it's good to share with you at the moment, is we're doing a bit of a brand strategy refresh. And our tagline is going to be "A life less ordinary," which my dad's been using for a while now. So what we really want people to think and do when they see the brand in retail space is actually, you know, he's seen as the Black farmer's upbringing, and it resonates with me. You know, I face barriers. You know, I want to start challenging uncertainty. I want to embrace jeopardy. And if people can start resonating with the story we're trying to tell from the packaging and the brand, that's going to be a really good mission for us. And we've also started to do that. So not sure if you're aware, but we've got a farm shop in Brixton.
Yeah, 100%. So we've
got a farm shop in Brixton. So we've had that literally coming up to a year now. And although having a premium quality area, like, you know, creating something like Dalesford, for example, it's community hub. You know, I work out of there most days, and you see the same people, the same faces in. They love it because they love the space, and they love being in the community and around people that they want to be around. So that in itself is just so nice to see a brand which champions diversity being in a space which is dominated by standard retail sort of farm shops as well. So a bit of both, really.
I was thinking about renting out the top part, actually.
The mezzanine.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice there, and I was like, oh, that looks really, really nice. Actually, that's a really good idea.
And we're launching. So we've got White City. So White City.
That's even closer to me. Yeah.
End of January, so that's next to the Broadcasting House.
Yes.
So you've got sort of White City House, the Soho House, Cricket, and then our sites next to that, which will be really exciting. And then we're sort of rolling out looking to roll out Canary Wharf, Central London, potentially Croydon as well. So the whole idea of the farm shop is to almost be that connection between customers and the brand itself, because we're at the moment, there isn't much of a link. You know, you have my dad's presence and visibility on social media, and you have the farm shops, which he's always in, as you would have seen. But there's no direct link to that in the retail space. So part of the job that I'm doing, and as you were saying before, like, what does a commercial director do, is creating that link between the two, which is going to be really, really important. So stay tuned for the farm shops next year. But we've got some really exciting plans to roll out more of them next year.
I really like that idea. I'll definitely be at the White City one. Definitely, I'll be there. So how do you assess risk? Because one of the things about having a brand itself is the risks that we take. And I know we spoke a little bit about risks before. And before you said you wasn't much of a risk taker, and your father pretty much was in a sense. But from your perspective now, what is it like being slightly more risk-taking and assessing the risk to know that it's worth doing the risk in the first place?
I think I was definitely growing up risk averse to an absolute extreme. I don't know why that was, to be honest. I think just my nature and how I was. I think
some people like to just play it safe, possibly, Alex. I think that's what it is, because you see the safety in something. You feel it could possibly be a comfort zone.
I think the irony of it is that my dad's book, Jeopardy: The Danger of Playing It Safe, is kind of the opposite of how I view it as well. So that is if I wrote a book, it'd probably just be playing it safe. But I think for me, I think there'll always be an element of like a calculated risk. So I'm very kind of thorough. I'm very analytical. You know, I'd like to assess options on what route to go down, but also in the back of my head, I'm quite clear on, you know, there is an element of the unknown and uncertainty, and actually it will be sort of thing. So I've definitely done, and I've learned that because, as I said before, being in a household more of risk takers, and actually, you know, just embracing what's going to happen has been really important. So and being now working in the brand almost gives me the freedom to take risks more than it would, going back to my career, you're part of a massive business. All businesses are quite risk averse as it is. You're probably not in that environment and have that nature to be comfortable and confident in taking a risk, which actually could probably have quite impactful effects. So it was a bit of nervousness to say, actually, I'm in a process driven. There was a lot of red tape around what you could and couldn't do. As soon as you move into a brand of entrepreneurship and encourage you to take risks, risks that, not completely haven't thought about, calculated risk is much nicer environment to be around, and kind of how I've started to embrace it. But as I said, I won't be fully risk taking, but more calculated risks.
No, I love the fact that you measure it, because there is I wish there was a lot more people like yourself. There's a lot more people who do take risks, yes, and they end up with a wonderful outcome. But then there are a lot of people who take risks and certain things happen. So it's good to be able to have that transparency of the balance between the two. So I think that's completely awesome. So if I were to say to you, Alex, if there was one question that you wished people would ask you, but no one has ever really asked you this question, what question would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I need to have a think about that. Question for me, what would it be and why?
If someone was to ask you a question, but nobody ever has asked you that question, what would it be and why?
I've always been probably quite interested in sort of what I guess why you the way that you are. It's one of those things. It's quite an interesting one that I've kind of, I guess it's more of a deeper question on sort of everyone kind of thinks that in terms of like, why are you the way you are now? I'm very, as I said to you before, very chilled, very relaxed. And it's kind of like, actually, why is that? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I know you're shaped by your childhood and your upbringing, but it's a really interesting question to say, like, actually, I've never really thought about it, and I've never been asked the question on actually, why are you like that, and why aren't you like this? And especially in an environment you live in, it's very kind of high stress. It's very fast paced and stuff like that. And nature completely goes against that, which I think is really interesting. But a question I've asked myself, I haven't really been asked by anyone else, but it's something that I've definitely thought about, and so actually it's quite interesting. Actually, why are you like the way you are? From that perspective. So yeah, I kind of just thought of that on the spot. I'm sure there is probably a better answer for that, but
no, I would actually like to ask. I would actually like to relay it back to you. So if you don't mind answering it, why do you believe that you are the way you are as an individual?
I think it goes back to being, and again, I think being in the environment that I was from a school perspective, definitely. And I said to you before, like everyone has very different experiences of going to boarding school. But if you think like a pretty young age, you're in an environment where you're not used to, you're away from your parents for the first time. There's an element of just wanting to kind of fit in and make sure you don't really stand out from the crowd. And at the beginning, you kind of just want to make it through without sort of, upsetting the status quo and things like that. So actually, when you look back at it, being chilled and relaxed, that was probably shaped because I was kind of just happy to blend in and not stick out and things like that. So for me, I think that's probably the key bit in my life that I think actually those sort of 4 to 5 years where I was kind of, trying to blend in and trying to belong to what I thought was what you needed to be was probably where my kind of chilled, relaxed nature has come from.
Do you still feel the same way now compared to then? It's just interesting that you said that you felt like rather than being the loud one, as some people are, as we know, they wanted the attention. It seems like you decided to be more introverted and decided to just observe more because you feed off the information from observing. I don't know if that's correct from your perspective.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, really. I think it's not like, I would never be sort of front. I mean, again, you look at my dad and stuff, who loves the
in front of the camera.
Whereas me, I'm kind of like the polar opposite. And I think it's a really, and I think why it works, like us working together, is because it's a really nice balance. you have really important relationships with retailers and suppliers who probably don't want someone like Dad dealing with them because, you know, X or Y could happen. Whereas me, I'm
Yeah.
quite chill, relaxed, you know, I have quite a good temperament on how to deal with retailers and suppliers and have quite a collaborative and strategic approach. So
Yeah.
I think that's why it's a really good balance. But I kind of always been like that, sort of, you know, a bit of a silent observer. But as I said before, like I've definitely grown into the fact that actually in times where I wouldn't speak up because I was afraid of judgment or how people were going to view my answer or whatever, that's definitely changed on sort of, you know, questioning stuff and actually bringing stuff to the table, which has been honestly like one of the hardest things. Like putting yourself into that position is like really uncomfortable. But throughout my whole career, you know, I got the same feedback from people basically saying like, you know, as uncomfortable as you need to put yourself in a position where people can see you and you're visible, because it's really important for growth. So that was a big change for me, which probably isn't extroverted at all. It's probably quite a relatively normal normal thing, but as an introvert, that's definitely something that took some time to get used to. But yeah, it's not. I'm happy in the way that I kind of do stuff and think about stuff, and I think the nature works well in the industry that I'm in and the market that I operate in, because people like dealing with people that have that nature and environment.
You've actually led me to my next question, which was actually about judgment. So we constantly get judged by how we look and the things that we do all the time without even opening our mouth sometimes. And one of the questions that I do love asking is, if I took out the word judgment from the dictionary and I said to you, Alex, there is no judgment in the world, what do you believe that you would do differently?
I think now I think, as I said before, I've kind of got over to a degree, got over the judgment of everything. And, you know, it could be very small things, you know, how you look, how you dress, kind of how you talk, how you present yourself and things like that. And as I said, like if you asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have listed everything that I've just talked about. But it's one of those things that is always the biggest thing. As I said to you, going back to school, is like fear of judgment, you know, throughout my career, fear of judgment, of asking questions. And it's something that I've kind of come to terms with, and actually like I've got over it, kind of thing. So it's something that's been definitely been difficult in getting over judgment, but I think it's something that I've grown with confidence and perspective, as I said, as I talked about earlier, to get over that fear of judgment.
What is the best advice that you believe you've ever received from somebody?
There's always a funny quote that one of my friends says to me: "If nothing goes right, take a left." So I don't know how to
That's actually a good one.
It's quite a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which I always, every time it's said, it makes me laugh. But it's also funny on two sentiments. It's just like, obviously, it's a funny quote, but also at the same time, it means quite a lot. You know, it's just like, you know, actually, if you're doing a lot of things that might not be working, try something new or do something new. And works really well in what I'm doing. So, you know, when I worked at Deliveroo, there's so much test and learn. There's so much fail fast. You know, if you're constantly doing something and it's not working, do something different. And don't waste your time and energy on something that doesn't matter or isn't working. So, yeah, I wouldn't say I have like a motivational quote, but my friend said that to me once years ago, and I've never got to forget it. So it's quite a funny one.
I might have to write that down, actually.
You should. It's a good one.
Oh, dear. So my next one for you is, if I took you and I said, Alex, I'm going to put you on a desert island for 24 hours. And I said, you're only allowed to bring with you an activist, a president, and a musician to talk to for 24 hours to have the conversation of your dreams with them. Who would you take on that island?
President. Ooh, that'd be an interesting one.
I've been getting some interesting answers with that one.
Oh, really? President. I'd definitely say musician. I think musician, actually. My new music. I'd probably say someone like the rapper Akala.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because
I've
seen some of it, like what he talks. He's actually really interesting. So I think he'd have some good conversations as well. I mean, to be, this will probably not be happy with some people's opinions. Based on current elections, you probably have to take Trump based on what's been.
I've had him a few times.
Oh, you haven't? You haven't?
Yeah.
Just interested in his life and how he views obviously what's been happening over the last few years on his first president run, but also the most recent one. It would be quite interesting. And then honestly, activist, I wouldn't be able to tell you actually.
Activist is quite a hard one, isn't it? People usually say Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they come up with various different ones.
Yeah, I think to be honest, Martin Luther King, I did ages ago when I was at school. We did a assembly or a play when I was Martin Luther King. Actually, when you look back at it, it's actually mad thinking about it, but I was representing him. And again, it was quite something that I remember to this day as well. I was we were doing the scene or whatever, and I had 2 eggs in my hand. One was just a normal egg, and one egg they just painted brown or black, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And basically the idea was, I cracked 2 eggs in the bowl and saying, although they're different colors on the outside, they're exactly the same on the inside.
Yep.
And that sounds good, but when I cracked the egg, it literally went all over me. So when you're like 5 or 6 or however old I was, you can imagine. Based on that, probably Martin Luther King is probably the one that resonates the most with me.
Oh man, it's actually quite sweet. We all have a different definition of what success means to us. Sometimes success to somebody can just be waking up in the morning. Another person, it could be passing their driving test. Another person, it could be, fighting cancer. But to you, Alex, if I said to you, what does success mean to you in your own definition? What would you say to me?
I think success for me, I think I've always wanted success to be like the small things, the small wins and the things that aren't probably on the bigger scale. But, and I think, one of the bits of feedback that Dad gives me all the time is like a lot of the stuff that I think aren't massive deals actually are. And when I think that stuff that's relatively small but actually is a success because the Black Farmer brand has never done that before. So a success for me is just like, if I take the brand, for example, if I launched a new product and managed to go into store and see it on the shelves and saw the numbers, like I'd be able to sit back and say, actually, that's a big success for me. Whereas from his perspective, having the initial conversation just with the buyer is a success. So, I'm always very conscious of like, I want to deliver the absolute maximum output from something. So, I'm quite a harsh critic on myself. And I think that's just, again, from the environment I've been in and the pressures that comes with it, you're expected to achieve a lot in a short space of time. So anything outside of 100% and the best outcome isn't success. Success is the finalized product and getting that maximum outcome. So if I'm honest, I'd like to tweak my thoughts on success and actually look back and look at the bits that actually to a lot of people would be a success, but to me don't go anywhere near what success would look like. So I think success for me is kind of like that broader piece. But now you've asked the question going forward, actually, I'd probably like a bit of a renewed view on what I view success as.
I like that. It's nice to see people's perspective on things and see how they change their thought process. If I was to say to you, if you could change one thing in the world, Alex, what would you change and why would you change it?
Do you mean just from a personal perspective?
I would say from a personal perspective, not from a brand perspective, because I find that if you change it from a personal perspective, you can always implement that into your brand.
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of what I was saying before. I think, I've since having that operation and that the AVM that I had in my head, I did understand the importance of perspective, but I think worrying and stress comes naturally to a lot of people anyway, and it's something that I obviously look at longer term and short term. I've always had the view on like kind of living by the day and having a view on sort of getting through the next day, but actually looking forward on what I want the long-term future and plan to be is going to be a big part of what I want to do. So again, I think having thinking back and looking at what I experienced and constantly being reminded of the importance of perspective is something that I continually need to remind myself. Actually, when you get trapped in all the day-to-day stuff, all the white noise that comes in, you sometimes forget that. And I go back to when I was sort of early 20s and experiencing that and going back to the worries and stress. And, you know, you need to pull yourself out and say, perspective, look at the bigger picture. So that's a constant reminder for me to keep on, you know, don't worry about it, don't stress about the stuff that really doesn't matter, because that's still starting to creep back into my head. Is the big thing for me.
I agree with you there. If I said to you, if there was one song that was the soundtrack of your life, what song would you choose, and why would you choose that particular song?
One soundtrack. Again, I think about Carla Shakespeare, that song all the time. That's one
that's a good one.
Always play. I love, like, I'm big into sort of like rappers and things like that. I've always loved that. That's kind of always been my favorite music. But yeah, Carla Shakespeare. It's because I've just always played it. It's always been in my head. Always having the background cooking and things like that. So I wouldn't say it's massively resonates for any particular reason, but it's something that I've always constantly played.
I'm actually, you know what I find wonderful is when I don't expect a certain artist to come out, I guess, smile.
Yeah.
But I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a bit of a random one, but yeah, that's the one that springs to mind.
I like that analogy. When was the last time that you felt totally at peace with yourself?
I'm pretty, like, I would say since, and I'm not just saying this, like, I think honestly since when I joined the brand, the Black Farmer, sort of, as I said, sort of 3 months, you know, I think in my head at the beginning, I thought, you know, it's going to be really stressful. You know, there's a huge amount of expectation, but actually, you know, my life has become just a lot calmer. You know, I feel a lot more relaxed, chilled. You know, going back to my old jobs, I absolutely love them and wouldn't change what I did for the world, but it comes with that stress and that expectation, which, you know, I actually got to the point, it's like, actually, I'm working for someone else and contributing to that, which actually isn't impacting me, but also, like, is it worth all the stress and anxiety that I'm getting from it? But as I said, like, coming into the brand, I know it's going to directly impact me for the next sort of 3 to 5 years or longer term. And it's just because I have that view and visibility on it, it just makes it easier for me to actually, you know what, just relax and chill and as you say, sort of be at peace. And I've definitely felt that. And actually, I think people have noticed it as well, and how passionately I speak about the brand. And, you know, going to work or being at work, you know you're making a difference, and you see that difference sort of play out in the form of being in retail or farm shop, or how people feel as well has been really important.
I've only got a few more for you, but my second to last one for you is, what would you say to anybody who has a brand and wants to push that brand forward to elevate it like you're doing within your brand? What would your advice be to them? Because I always believe that mentors are a huge part of what we become as well. What would your advice be to anybody who wants to elevate their brand?
I think, and what I'm working out at the moment is, like, just kind of go back to basics. I think from my perspective, and what we're actually trying to find out is actually, like, what does the brand truly stand for? You know, we're in a very, you know, we've got, again, one of our biggest products is premium pork sausages, for example. You know, we're in a very populated area and fixture within the store. It's a product that can be replicated by anyone. You know, you can't call a gluten-free premium product a USP anymore. That's almost just like a prerequisite for a customer. So actually, what is your unique selling point? And as I went back to you before, sort of having a life less ordinary as a strap line, and actually telling the story of the Black Farmer and embracing ambiguity and uncertainty is what we want to resonate with the customer. So I think for brands, it's actually, how are you making customers feel, as opposed to focusing on actually the product yourself, because ultimately we could probably create most things, but actually it's the brand that people buy into, not necessarily the product. So if I had any advice for the brand, it's actually just going back and thinking, you know, what does your brand stand for, and what story are you trying to tell, to build that connection to the customer.
That's actually really, really good advice, and I think a lot of people would use that and elevate their brand to push forward. So I would, before I say thank you to you, Alex, I would love to know where people can find you, can find the brand. Please let us know where you can find you.
Yeah, of course. So again, on all sorts of social media, most kind of active on LinkedIn. Again, blackfarmer.com online farm shop that we have as well. And then, as I said, like if people are around South London, Brixton Farm Shop, just in the village, just opposite Cricket. So yeah, obviously pop in. And then, as I said, we've kind of got 3 to 4 farm shops opening over the next year. So again, it's going to keep growing and growing over the next year. So yeah, feel free to drop into your listeners as well.
Alex, this is where I say thank you so much for taking your time to come on the Young People Show, for expressing, your story, for your background in being a commercial director, but just loving the fact and being passionate about what you do as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome, and guys, this is why I say to you, thank you so much for listening and watching the Young People Show. And please remember, you can subscribe and watch us on any platform that you prefer listening to. And this is where I say, guys, thank you again for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another. Take care.